News of the Times. The case of the Blackburn mill tragedy. Welcome to News of the Times. In today's episode, it is 1912 in Blackburn, and a prominent weaving town. Young Alice, 18 years of age, has been courted by Arthur, 22. The young couple, who work in the same weaving mill, have been courting some 5 weeks. For whatever reason, Alice decides she is less enamoured with Arthur than before and wishes to break off the budding relationship, such as it was, with tragic results. The case was considered quite shocking in its day, with a large proportion of the town rallying around young Arthur. Queen Mary herself is appealed to, but will it work? We take a look at the background, the crime, and the aftermath of true love gone sour. And in today's end of episode further particulars case, we have a wonderful case from Wales, also from 1912, recounting a humorous court case between a town crier and the owner of some evil chickens. A real case filled with Edwardian wit and humour and insight into rural life in Edwardian Great Britain. If this sounds like your cup of tea, may we ask you to temporarily look downward from your screen towards that very small thumbs up button and give it a tap. If you haven't already subscribed, thank you for our friends who have, and you like our kind of shows, we would be grateful if you could subscribe as well. Jolly good. And now, with no further preamble, on with the show. Background. Alice Beetham, only just turned 18, came from a Roman Catholic family. Although freedom of religion had been the norm in England for several decades, yet interreligious marriages were frowned upon and created their own challenges. Alice, like many others of her economic class in Blackburn, worked at the local weaving mill. She is described as quite pretty and vivacious in nature. Arthur Burkett, 22 years of age, also worked at the factory, which is where he had come into contact with Alice. Described as a thin, weedy young man, he seems to have fallen completely for pretty, vivacious Alice and began to court her ardently. Burkett's father had died, leaving his mother and a younger brother, who he helped to support. Another brother had emigrated to the United States. Arthur helped to support his remaining family and was said to be a nice lad. Things seemed to be going smoothly between the pair, with Alice being invited for tea at Arthur's house to meet his mother, a meeting that seemed to set the scene for a coming proposal of marriage. Then, as the two are speaking in the street, Alice's father, who doesn't like the look of his daughter being seen under a lamppost, speaks to a young man, indicating his disapproval. It is short after this event that Alice breaks off the budding romance between the two of them. Arthur is devastated. Things take a dramatic turn shortly afterwards. From the Manchester Evening News, 21st of May 1912, the mill tragedy, inquest today at Blackburn. The father's evidence. At the Copy Nook police station in Blackburn this morning, the inquest was opened on the body of Alice Beetham, the victim of the terrible tragedy at Blackburn yesterday. The inquiry was conducted by the coroner. Arthur Burkett, who will be charged with the murder of the girl, was unable to be present. The father of the girl, who was the only witness, stated that his daughter was 18 years old last August and was a cotton weaver. She had always worked at the Gate St. Mill, and she was in perfect health the last time he saw her, which was Sunday night. He did not see her yesterday morning, as she left to go to her work before he got up. The witness had seen the young man Burkett once about a fortnight ago. It was on a Sunday night, and he, Burkett, was standing at the bottom of the street talking to his daughter. Street corner courting. The witness had been told that Burkett and his daughter had been walking out together for about 5 weeks. When he saw them talking together in the street, he said to Burkett, "I reckon not to street corner courting. You'd better take her up home." Burkett answered, "She will take no harm with me." The witness then said, "She will take even less harm up at your home." The young couple then went to the house and he followed. Burkett stopped about an hour, and then the witness told him it was about time he was making towards home. Burkett went, and the witness has not seen him since. The next evidence that is brought forward outlines the crime step by step by several of the eyewitnesses. There were when Arthur decides to take the life of the young girl who had rejected him. From the Illustrated Police News, the 8th of June 1912, the Lancashire Mill Tragedy. Story of the crime told at the inquest. The inquest was resumed at Blackburn on Friday on the body of Alice Beetham, aged 18 years, a cotton weaver, who is alleged to have been murdered by her former lover, Arthur Burkett, aged 22 years, in the Jubilee Mill on the 20th of May. Burkett, who is stated having attempted suicide with the razor with which he is said to have attacked the girl, was discharged from the local infirmary on Tuesday and was now present in the custody of the police. Lily Wagg said that on Friday, before the tragedy, Alice came to her loom at the mill and told her that she could not take to Burkett, that she, Alice, would have to give up going with him. That night, Burkett called at the witness's house and told her that Alice had chucked him. The witness's husband said there were plenty of women besides her. Burkett answered, "But no one looks like Alice to me." He said he would cut her damned head off. There were several eyewitnesses of what occurred in the West warehouse, including John Edward Dewhurst, who, describing the incident, said that the girl moved towards the door leading into the weaving shed. Burkett followed, and as Alice pushed the door, he put his right arm round her head, drawing it backwards. Then he put his arm over her head and drew his right hand across her throat. The girl fell, and the eyewitness rushed Burkett, who was then cutting his own throat and knocking him down. The witness ran to the watch house for assistance, and when he returned, Beetham and Burkett had both been carried into the mill yard. Burkett was asked where was the knife he had used, and his reply was, "I have done with it something sharper than a knife. I've done it with a razor." A local saddler deposed to Burkett having bought a razor in his shop shortly after 8 o'clock on the morning of the tragedy. Police Constable Bellis stated that when on the way to the infirmary in the ambulance, Burkett said, I have been off my head for 2 days. I have been crazed and did not know what I was doing. I did not intend to harm the girl. I only intended to take my own life. I walked about until 1 o'clock on Sunday morning. When I saw Alice going for some well this morning, I asked her to make up again, and she would not. I got hold of her and do not remember what took place after. Burkett afterwards expressed his sorrow for what had occurred. Dr. Bannister, describing the wounds, said the injury must have been inflicted with considerable force. Death would be almost instantaneous. The jury, without retiring, found a verdict of wilful murder against Burkett, who was committed for trial at Manchester Assizes. The case goes to trial, but the verdict is a foregone conclusion given the evidence. The defence attempts to use a temporary insanity plea, but the judge is unsympathetic. From the Illustrated Police News, the 13th of July 1912, the Blackburn murder, sentence of death. Manchester Assizes, Mr. Justice Bucknell passed sentence of death on Arthur Burkett, 22, weaver of Blackburn, for murdering his former sweetheart, Alice Beetham, 18 years old, on May the 20th, in Blackburn, at which both worked. He purchased a razor on the morning of the murder and seized the girl from behind, inflicting a terrible wound in her neck. The girl fell to the ground and expired almost immediately. The prisoner, at the same time, inflicted superficial injuries on himself. Evidence was given that the prisoner had stated that Alice had chucked him and that he would cut her head off. Counsel for the defence urged that the prisoner was insane and at the time and pleaded for a verdict of manslaughter. Burkett was found guilty. Mr. Justice Bucknell described his offence as a murder premeditated and determined and cruel, and said no other verdict would have been a just one. The prisoner and his victim worked at the Jubilee Mill in Blackburn. He was apparently in love with her. They were often together, and to friends he had said there was only one girl for him, and if he did not get her, he would have none. Once, when her father told him that he did not like seeing them together at street corners, Burkett said, "Don't bother. Shall take no harm while she's with me." He also said that he would chop her damned head off. On the following day, talking to another woman, you asked him if he had been with the girl that weekend. He said, "No, it's through her father. If I've done wrong once, it doesn't say I'll always go wrong." During the breakfast interval at the mill on May the 20th, Burkett bought a razor, and after the operatives had resumed their work, he followed Beetham into the Weft house. As she was leaving the place, he followed her, seizing her from behind, put his arm around her neck and cut her throat, almost severing the head from the body. She died almost instantly. Burkett then tried to cut his own throat and inflicted 2 wounds upon it, one superficial and the other about half an inch deep. Some fellow workmen bandaged his neck. The police were called, and he was taken into custody. Burkett was a weak, sickly-looking young fellow who seemed to have very little stamina, and both at the police court and the assizes he swooned during the proceedings. Burkitt's mother is utterly distraught and attempts to rally locals to help push for a commutation of her son's sentence. Fearing that pleas to the Home Office would not be enough, she writes directly to Queen Mary, hoping for royal aid in getting his sentence commuted. From the Daily Mirror, the 18th of July, 1912. Mother's appeal to the Queen. Pathetic letter on behalf of her son lying under sentence of death. Mrs. Burkitt, mother of Arthur Burkitt, aged 22, a Blackburn weaver, who was flying under sentence of death for cutting the throat of his sweetheart at a local mill in which they were both worked yesterday, sent the following letter. Dear Queen Mary, it is with almost a broken heart I write you this humble letter to ask if you could use your influence on behalf of my poor son, Arthur Burkitt, who is lying under sentence of death for the murder of his sweetheart, Alice Beetham. He was such a loving son and such a good lad at home that I feel sure he would not have been in his right senses at the moment he committed this awful deed. I do beg of you and pray to God that you will see your way to help me in my terrible trouble. If the sentence is carried out, I shall be left with my little child, who is 2.5 years of age, and another son, aged 19. Arthur was the main supporter of the family, as I am a widow. Do, dear Queen, try your best for me, I beseech you. Hoping you will grant this request for his poor, heartbroken, widowed mother, I remain your humble servant, Mrs. Burkitt. Unless the young man is reprieved, he is to be executed on Tuesday. Her appeal and the appeal to the Home Office do not work. Arthur, informed that he will be facing the scaffold, writes to his mother, assuring her that the justice being meted out to him is his wish. From the Daily Mirror, the 23rd of July, 1912. Glad to die. In a letter to his parents, Arthur Burkitt, aged 22, who is to be executed this morning in Strangeways Prison for the murder of his sweetheart in a mill, says that he is more than glad that he has not got a reprieve. The letter continues, I have tried hard to think it would be best if I were reprieved, but from the bottom of my heart I am thankful I have been not reprieved. I feel as certain as there is a God in heaven that I should go mad and lose my reason altogether if I had to serve a life sentence. I am more than hoping God has forgiven me and I shall meet Alice in heaven. I'm thankful I am going, for I feel that I could not live now that she has gone. Mrs. Beetham, mother of the girl Alice, accompanied Mr. and Mrs. Burkitt when they had said their farewell interviews with their son yesterday. The execution takes place in Manchester some 2 months after the terrible public murder of Alice. A rather large crowd for a closed execution arrives to see the raising of the black flag. Several women in the crowd are in tears. His mother is utterly bereft. From the Manchester Evening News, 23rd of July, 1912. Manchester execution. Blackburn murderer hanged. Woman in tears. Arthur Burkitt, a Blackburn weaver, aged 22 years, was hanged at Strangeways Prison, Manchester, at 8 o'clock this morning for the murder of a sweetheart, Alice Beetham, aged 18, who was employed at the same mill, at 8:45 on the morning of Monday, the 20th of May. The executioners were Ellis and Lum, and amongst those attending the execution was the acting under-sheriff and the governor of the prison. The official notice is that the sentence has been carried out, signed by the governor and the chaplain of the prison, and that the body had been examined by Dr. Edwards and life found to be extinct, were posted on the prison gates at about 20 minutes past 8, shortly after the governor and the acting under-sheriff had left their place. A large crowd. A crowd of 400 or 500 people had assembled in South Hall Street at 8 o'clock. It included a large proportion of women and girls who were apparently taking their breakfast interval at work in the neighbourhood. Most of these people gathered at a point from which the prison clock could be seen, but it was stopped, and until the passing bell began to ring, probably few people in the crowd knew with certainty that the time of execution had passed. When the notices were posted on the gates, the crowd rushed towards the streets to read them. Many women wept copiously, and one at least seemed to be almost hysterical. The morning, the gloomy and the damp, was fine until after 8:30. Small knots of people lingered near the spot, and passers-by stopped to scan the official intimation that Burkitt had been hanged. Unveiling efforts to secure a reprieve. After Burkitt had been sentenced to death, an effort was made to secure his reprieve, and a petition started at Blackburn was signed by thousands of people before it was forwarded to the Home Secretary. Among those who signed it was the mother of the murdered girl. On Saturday morning, however, it was intimated that the sentence would be carried out. Burkitt wrote a number of letters, and his last, which was sent to his parents and was written after he knew that he was to be hanged, was very, very long and contained at least 1,000 words. In it he said he felt as certain as there was a God that he should go mad and lose his reason altogether if he had to serve a life sentence. If they were to offer me 5 years instead of this, I would choose this. When Tuesday comes, with God's help, I will face it like a man. Further particulars. Edwardian times were filled with popular writers of wit and humour. P.G. Wodehouse, H.H. Munro, and George Bernard Shaw are only a few of the humorous writers of the day. And then we also seem to have this notable personage, the town crier for a small town in Wales, who, in representing himself in a small court case, has the audience in stitches. From the Illustrated Police News, the 8th of June 1912, Welsh town crier keeps the court in roars of laughter over a case of assault. Mr. William Williams, the premier town crier and bill poster in chief, his own descriptions, followed his appearance in a county court action by summoning at Llanwist Police Court Ralph Kesey Williams, the husband of the defendant of the county court case, for assault. The complainant's opening speech was, "I never expected," he said, "when setting down in this ancient and powerful town, that I would become the centrepiece for an ensanguined encounter." Laughter. Your worships, between the hours of noon and 10 o'clock on Tuesday last, I was walking peaceably along Watling Street, with the thoughts soaking aloft. when I was rudely and abruptly stopped by Kersey, whereinafter to be known and identified as the defendant in this case. Laughter. The defendant aforesaid detached my mind from its congenial pursuit by the use of such terrible language that the most godly man in linguist who was approaching turned back, shocked, and hastened away. Laughter. The defendant then challenged me to combat, but I am a man of peace and averse to war since my retirement from the force. Laughter. So I admonished him and told him to engage in battle with a younger man than I. Seeing the savagery deepening in his eye, I took refuge in an adjoining shop where I stopped for 20 minutes in fear and trembling. Thinking the defendant had sheared on, I emerged from my shelter when, before I could run for my life, the defendant struck me one in the eye and another on the temple, where your honour will observe a patch of stamp paper. Laughter. The blows sent me flying into a shop. Therein the defendant is hustling me on the premises during closing hours, and he is guilty of misdemeanour within the meaning of the act, and should be pursued and punished accordingly. Loud laughter. When I was ejected, laughter, from the shop, I leaned on the window sill and bled profusely, leaving an ensanguined mark on the pavement still observable. More laughter. Mr. T. Latimer Jones, for the defendant, asked, "You called the defendant's wife bad names that morning?" Complainant, tragically, "Where is she? Produce the female and let me cross-examine her." Loud laughter. What was the conversation which led to the alleged assault? He cast reflection. I fought an action recently against the defendant's wife for allowing her pen of mongrel poultry to trespass and assimilate my onion beds, 4 in number. The case and the manner in which I conducted it awoke considerable and national interest and widespread publicity in the press. More laughter. Your backyard and that of the defendant's wife are near each other. It is a garden within the meaning of the act and not a yard. It is covered with soil of a productive nature. My onion bed, through the interference of Mary Jane's marauding poultry, has been converted into a potato patch. The county court action will end in a perjury case. It is a great pity that the whole nation is damned for few perjuries. Loud laughter. The complainant called Police Constable Jones and asked, "Did you or did you not, officer, see any marks of assault of ensanguined nature on the pavement where I stood? If so, inform the magistrate whether the visible patch was water or blood." Loud laughter. Police Constable Jones replied, "I only saw you with your face bleeding." The defendant swore that the complainant threatened him and had hit him in self-defence, and Mr. Williams proceeded to cross-examine. Now, Kersey, known as the defendant in the present action, he remarked severely, "On your oath, how many times have you been in the scales in this court and found wanting?" Loud laughter. "That has nothing to do with you," was the defendant's prompt reply. The bench fined the defendant 10 shillings and costs. That concludes this episode of the case of the Blackburn Mill tragedy. We really hope you enjoyed the show. If you did enjoy the show, we would be grateful if you could like, comment and or share the video to friends, family or even the family pet. It all helps to keep us relevant in the giant ocean that is YouTube. Thank you all. Support is gratefully appreciated. You have been listening to News of the Times, and I am Robin Coles.